So, and there are a hadith that says that her prayers do not rise beyond her ears, meaning that Allah cannot even hear them if you are praying while menstruating. And there are cases where women, you can't recite the Quran while you're menstruating either. And all of these different they're all magic spells in Islam. So if you recite a particular surah, you get like all these benefits from the surah, right? Each surah has its own magic associated with it. But you can't practice Quranic recitation when you're menstruating either. So it's harder to memorize because there are certain days where you can't even practice it. So you can't say it on the other days because it's harder for you to memorize physically. You were also talking about circumcision. If you'll share my screen again, a lot of Muslims say that this is not part of Islam, but it absolutely is.
It is.
This is not just a cultural thing. Muhammad assumed that women would be circumcised. He said to Umar used to say that when the circumcised part passes the circumcised part, the ritual cleaning after sex is obligatory. So it's saying what sex acts require you to do a ritual cleaning. So when the two circumcised parts meet, then the bath is obligatory. That's what Muhammad taught, the meeting of the circumcised parts. So he said this explicitly. When the two circumcised parts meet and so, the bath is necessary. So this is part of Islam to the extent that it is obligatory for women to be circumcised in two of the four schools of fiqh. It's absolutely obligatory. And the other two, it's considered, oh gosh, what's it
Sunnah
called?
and a courtesy.
Thank you. Exactly.
So Lloyd has to go shortly, but I did want to give him a chance to share any what the Sharia tells us about female circumcision, or what we would call FGM.
It does state that circumcision is obligatory. Now, unfortunately, let me share this so that everyone can see this. So, circumcision is obligatory for both men and women. Both must be circumcised. Now, I have no idea why you would need to circumcise a woman. There is no need for this. Now, notice he does lie here. So, for men, it consists of removing the prepuce from the, and for women, removing the prepuce, right? And he says here, now this, Adam Seeker has gone over this section in the past, as have others. He says here, in Arabic, the buzzer of the clitoris, not the clitoris itself, as some mistakenly assert. This, however, apparently differs from the Arabic text, and this is not what is stated here versus what is stated here. So while they say here for a Western audience this is whitewashed, from an Islamic point of view, they do remove the clitoris. So it's not just that, but it is obligatory for both men and women in both cases. So it's not a cultural practice. Remember, if it's cultural, it is Islamic. If it's cultural, it's legal. Whatever was cultural was absorbed into Islam and became law. So bachabazi is legal in Islam. Diddling little boys is normal. It's lawful. So yeah, hopefully that clarifies and provides some insight there. But notice it says the Hanbalis hold it. It's not obligatory, but sunnah. Yeah, well, maybe, right? But the Hanbalis are generally a minority, and the Hanafis consider it a mere courtesy to the husband. I would take all of this with a grain of salt, because not everything written here is true, because he has, let's just say they've whitewashed certain things to make it more palatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a hadith. I cannot share my my screen, but hadith 43499. Look at this. A woman used to perform circumcision in Medina. The Prophet said to her, "Do not cut severely, as that is better for a woman and more desirable for a husband." This is the hadith. And this is the word of Muhammad.
It's all about the husband.
It's all about the husband, and they don't care about the consequences and the psychological issues and the trauma that these women go through, because it plays on every area of your life. Once that happens to you, it will take a miracle for you to recover.
And you're speaking from personal experience here.
Yes. So I'm one of them, and it's a painful, not only inhumane and painful procedures. Is they use knives, they use blades, they use scissors. I mean, machetes, all type of things that can cut, unsanitized. And you lay your little girl on that table and you cut her for a man. And these girls, some of them, they get HIV from these things, all type of infections. And then during,
please just stop there, if I may. Sorry to interrupt you.
Mm-hmm.
TRS Cartoons, the pedophile, TRS
Mm-hmm.
Cartoons has said he's against FGM. However, he is obviously for child sex. He just says it is not rape if the child consents. I mean, I think he should be banned for that. So
yeah, I think.
I mean, this is disgusting. If the child consents, and when he says child, remember, you can literally do a month-old baby. This is legal in Islam. He is saying that month-old child, that 2-month-old child, that 6-month-old child has consented.
I think he's just a distraction. I think he wants to distract us, like literally. He's just a distraction. It's sickening.
Yeah, but this is what he believes.
Yeah, I mean, we have it from his own words.
I worry for his wife,
here's a question
for his children.
Lloyd, is there such a thing as consent for girls under the age of 9? Are they consulted about their marriage, and do they have the ability to consent to it? And then also another question, is there any consent required or needed or given at all within marriage? If a man wants to have sex with his wife, is there any need for consent?
No. She's not allowed to say no. There's no need for consent. So he can. So the what we would term marital rape is perfectly legal. She does not have any right to say no. And prior to the age of 9, she has no say in the matter. If I remember the law correctly, prior to 9, she has no say whatsoever in the matter. Oh, no. Once she reaches the age of 9, she has no say in if her guardian decides to marry her off. She has no say. And once she's married, she has no right to refuse. She can be beaten for that. She is then a bad wife.
Yeah, the quote consent, the thing is, if you have reached 9, technically there is a consent of your silence. But if you arrange your own marriage, Muhammad said, if you are a virgin who hasn't been married and divorced before, because these women were divorced and thrown away like trash constantly. When they were young and hot, they got to marry the richer men. And then when the richer men got tired of them, they threw them away. And then they married poorer men. And then they worked their way down the social ladder as they aged out, became too damaged or fat or whatever, for men to find them as desirable to support as they had. So at the point when you are arranging your first of very often many marriages, you were not allowed to arrange your own marriage whatsoever, or you're considered a prostitute. A prostitute is the woman who arranges their own marriage, according to Muhammad. And if you are a good daughter, then you'll say yes. And your silence is your consent if you are a virgin over 9. If you're under 9, then there is no consent at all, period, paragraph, the end. Your father's made the decision and you belong to him. There's not even a necessary for silence. Although if you have watched documentaries about arranged marriages in Bangladesh, silence looks an awful like screaming and crying.
Yeah,
with
but
these
also the
girls
guardian.
who are 14 to 18 getting married
They are,
off.
a guardian may compel the female charge to marry someone. This is also legal. So a guardian can overrule that. So it says that section M3.13 within the Reliance. Guardians are of two types: those who may compel their female charges to marry someone and those who may not. So it is possible for them to overrule and simply compel them. So they can compel, meaning to marry her to a suitable match without her consent. I can show this. So maybe I should just show it so everyone has seen it.
Yep.
Okay, so guardians who may marry a virgin to a man without her consent, right? So the guardians of two types who may compel the female charges to marry someone, and compel meaning they can force her to marry a match without her consent. So her father can overrule her wishes. So hopefully that's clear.
So
In most Islamic world, in most Islamic countries, the girl have no say in the marriage. It's usually the parents that just arranges everything.
yeah, according to that, her biological father, as long as she's a virgin, i.e., it's her first marriage, or her biological grandfather can both compel her.
Yeah, there's slight differences according to different madhabs, but in effect, in the real world, because there is one hadith where a woman was going to be compelled by her father, but she didn't want to marry someone, and Muhammad said for her, she didn't have to get married to him. But in the real world, it doesn't really matter what madhab you belong to. If your father decides you're going to marry so-and-so, you're going to. That's why they have, the documentaries.
As long as it's legal in one of the
Bangladeshis.
madhabs, as long as one of the madhab has made it legal, then it's okay. It doesn't matter if it's like, as long as somewhere it's been made legal within that corpus of sharia text, it's fine. And also there are exceptions. Remember, in Islamic law, there are exceptions to every law, and the exceptions are so broad and so varied that they basically make a mockery of the actual law. There's literally not a single law in Islam that doesn't have an exception, a loophole, or something that cancels it. And those the corpus of data, the rulings on the cancellations are far more voluminous than the ones that allow it. So, yeah.
Definitely. So we did have a question, which I assume is a true question.
Sorry to have interrupted you, Hajjah. My apologies. I just thought that was an egregious statement.
No, it's fine.
So Farish asks, what does the female circumcision do or doesn't do? So I assume this is a real question. He actually doesn't know what we're describing.
So, I can answer that for him if he likes.
Sure.
What it does to the benefits for women is zero. There's zero benefits. But this, after being circumcised, there's lifetime effects for the women. You have anemia, you become anemic, miscarriage. Women who's been circumcised can easily have miscarriage. I almost lost my children twice. And you have infection, prolonged child labor. It's not the same as a woman who did not go under FGM. Labor is crucial. And then there's depression, there's shame, there's a feeling of unworthiness, there's suicidal, the list is endless. The list is endless when a little girl undergo female genital mutilation. It damages them for a lifetime. And then another thing is that if a girl goes through that, let's just take a look at me. It is the hardest thing for you to have any type of cut in your body. Like, let's say I just got cut here for a little bit and just saw the blood. It takes you back in time. You become insecure about your body, and you have this extreme anger in you, and you are, even when you are married, you remarry again. It is sexual pleasure you don't feel anything. You don't feel anything.
Mhm.
You don't even feel the man penetrating, you know? So it's sick. And then that, just think about a woman, you're married and you're in love with somebody, and then you cannot feel your husband because of what's done to you.
Well,
You know, like I said, it takes a miracle, you know, to restore you. And then you have this extreme anger and you feel like every man is against you, and that plays into your relationships. So the list is endless, and it has to be stopped.
Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen here.
I wonder why TRC and Safraz don't show us their Sharia laws and prove us wrong. You know, why it's always opinion, personal opinion, but never actual references.
That's a good question. So let me make this bigger. This is the World Health Organization. Female genital mutilation involves the partial or total removal of external female genitalia or other injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. The practice has no
Injury.
health benefits for girls and women. FGM can cause severe bleeding and problems urinating and later cysts, infections, as well as complications in childbirth and increased risk of newborn deaths. More than 200 million girls and women alive today have undergone FGM in 30 countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia where FGM is practiced. Interesting correlation between the countries where Islam is practiced there. FGM is mostly carried out on young girls between infancy and age 15. FGM is a violation of human rights of girls and women. There's no evidence suggesting greater involvement of healthcare providers in the practice. This is known as medicalization. The WHO is opposed to all types of FGM. So just to put medical professionals behind what Hadja just said there, there are severe health complications, there are severe risks, and there is no benefit whatsoever.
And
And additionally, Thunderous brought this up earlier, and someone else just made a similar comment. In Somalia, it's known for women to sew up the vagina of a child for it to be torn open in the wedding night. So sometimes they go even beyond what is technically FGM, and they sew the woman shut so that it's physically impossible for her to have sex.
Yeah, well, that's actually part of FGM in certain areas. That's the normative practice. So the quote circumcision of women is a very different. The circumcision as practiced by Jews around the time of Jesus and before was an extremely minimal type of practice. Even now, the level of circumcision is quite a bit more for men than it was back then for political reasons that are way beyond here. But it does not cause sexual dysfunction. You are capable of having sexual feeling, sensation. The purpose of female genital mutilation is to remove sexual sensation. That is the purpose. So that is how you are a decent and chaste woman, because they believe that, because Islam believes that women, like men, are such hormonal sex-filled monsters that they can't possibly not have sex with anyone who comes walking by unless they are inhibited such that they cannot derive any sexual satisfaction. The point of female genital mutilation is to make it impossible for women to experience sexual pleasure, and particularly the more extreme forms. That's why there it's claiming that, oh, well, it only cuts a little bit of the clitoral hood. That is very, very rare. that the
Yeah.
clitoral hood alone is cut, in spite of that mistranslation. It is almost always a clitorectomy, meaning that the entire clitoris is removed. And very often it is so severe, and that, of course, is close to, your urinary tract. If that becomes scarred and becomes blocked, you die. That was the major cause whenever they created eunuchs, of eunuchs dying, is because a lot of times there'd be issues with urination and you'd die because your urinary tract get blocked. Well, you die now if you get scarred up so much that you can't urinate anymore, because a lot of these people are not living in places where they have hospitals that will come in and rush in and prevent this from happening. In addition, that in a lot of cases, they do try to cut a very large amount around, because even though the clitoris is the center of sexual stimulation, there are other parts of your labia minora that do contribute. And so they very often cut off the labia minora. And a lot of times they do also stitch them together, leaving only a pea-sized hole so that menstrual blood can come out, so that a man can be assured that he has bought the first rights to a woman. And on the wedding night, there is scar tissue there. And he rips it apart. Now, because the injury to the labia minora is so common, this causes what's called a fistula, which is in childbirth. Whenever you try to give birth, you need stretchy tissue there to pass the very large head of the baby through that part of your body. Instead, you have scar tissue. So a lot of women die, and tons of babies die because the baby cannot fit out. And in other times, you have your body tears where it can, because the scar tissue is hard. Your perineum is softer, and so it rips through your perineum and causes your vagina and your rectum to become joined, and that's called a fistula. And it can happen internally or externally during childbirth. It's incredibly common in places like Somalia, Ethiopia, and it's horrific. It is absolutely horrific. There is no other words for it. And the purpose is so that women, the chastity of women, because Islam's view of the Muslims, Islam's view of good Muslim men, is that they're so sex crazed that they can't control themselves. Good Muslim women need to have this happen to them because they're so sex crazed that otherwise they can't help themselves. Basically, this is what Islam teaches. This is what it breeds.
Guys,
I'll
off in a minute.
In here.
Yeah,
So,
I'll get off in a minute, but I just wanted to show something. So this, unfortunately, the reliance, while it is broad, it's not always deep. Right. But notice this, we talk in the book, this is the book of marriage. And what we have here is the opening. So this is section M1.1. And a man who needs to marry because of desire for sexual intercourse and has enough money. Not when you fall in love with someone and you feel that this is your partner for life, you need to, it's like, okay, you're horny and you got the money to pay for it, go for it. This is Islamic law, basically. It's recommended. And notice, Muhammad says, marry one another that may increase. So not that you may, as a woman, have pleasure, but have babies. This is why women are baby machines in the Middle East. But notice it says, if you need to marry because of a desire for sexual intercourse, that's why you marry.
Need to marry. Because you have sexual desire.
Something's turning blue, I need to pay for it.
Aren't you guys just like looking at it? What is sex in Islam? Like what? like everything is about sex and money. Everything. Like I just, when I got out of Islam and I started doing my research and the things that I found out.
It's horrific.
It's horrific. And some of these girls, touching to Lloyd, what you said, some of these girls go through this cutting multiple times in their life when they were when as a baby, before their first period, when they get married. Because they have to be cut again for the man to enter. Like literally. It's I worry for, my heart goes out to Muslim women, but their children, their
Just tell them
children.
this is barbaric. This is prehistoric behavior. So guys, I need to get out of here. It's been 2 hours, so I need
Yep.
to.
We'll let you go, Lloyd. We'll continue on with some comments from the audience, but thank you very much for joining us today, Lloyd. Bringing in the Sharia makes this, shows that it's not just people doing what they want and ignoring the law. It shows that it's condoned by the law. It's allowed in a sense. All it covers it up. You can't talk about it. So yeah, it's illegal, but you also can't point it out if you're the victim, which means in effect there's no real penalty for committing this crime.
Allah, the great concealer, right? The concealer of sins, not the. Yeah, just crazy. Thanks, guys. Hajra, good to meet you. And
Good meet
yeah,
you,
man,
brother.
it's heartbreaking. Till next time, guys. See you
All
soon.
right. Take
Thank you.
care. God bless you.
Right. And one point that Lloyd made that was important is about the variety. As long as one madhab says it, that it is permissible. The picking and choosing from laws is something that is allowed. So if you mostly follow such and such, if you want to follow a different one, there is something called it's considered a mercy in Islam, and I forgot what exactly they call that. There's a technical term for the differences in rulings. That there are certain differences of ruling and opinion and everything else that is considered a mercy. If all the schools agree on something, then that's obligatory and you must follow it. If there's a difference, then the differences are considered a mercy, and you can pick and choose. Well, guess who gets to pick and choose? It's the dad. So the dad can always choose to follow. Oh, well, I'm now going to follow, sure, we're mostly Hanbali, but now I'm following Reliance of the Traveler because, this is what I want to do. So that is baked into Islam is this ability to pick and choose according to whatever suits you if you are the person in power.
Yeah, whatever suits the man who wrote the book. That's what Islam is all about. And if you're a woman, if I were you, I'll run from that. Like seriously, like your child have no future. You have no future, not on earth, not when you pass.
Yeah, and in the descriptions of Jannah, you find out that women will be wearing niqabs, and they will be being only inside. They will not go out to the marketplace. Even in Jannah, you will only live in the tents beside the rivers, which Muhammad somehow thought were like springs, like an oasis came up, and then he thinks it comes out of ground and then goes back underground. So like these oasis tents and in the palaces, and that's the only places they'll be. They're still not allowed to go out. They will never look at another man. They will have a hymen that regrows. The only thing that you get that's supposed to be a benefit is that you're more beautiful than the Horis. You're supposed to be more beautiful than the Horis to the point that the outer lining to the inner lining of the garment, and how much more beautiful you are. Your jealousy will be removed from you. You will be assigned, if one of your husbands makes it, you'll be assigned to a husband to whom you were married or widowed from when you died. If you get divorced, you'll be assigned to a different man. So if you are a super wonderful Islamic woman, and you should be way up there at the highest Jannah, but the guy you happen to be married to when you died barely makes the lowest Jannah, you get to be with him. You don't get to be where you are, and you don't get to earn anything. Your only chance is that he doesn't make it at all, and so then you get assigned to someone at the level that you earned. Like, this is just insanity, right? So, there's that hadith, and then the one other hadith I wanted to talk about was about the hot woman in a mosque. So there was this gorgeous woman in the mosque with Muhammad, and all the men were staring at her butt when she was praying instead of paying attention to Muhammad. So what does Muhammad say? He says all the women need to get to the back of the mosque now.
Divide
he doesn't
them.
say, stop lusting over this woman. She hasn't done anything. Leave her alone. No, women need to go to the back of the mosque. That's what he said.
And that's where they stay. That's back in the back of the mosque during prayer. In the back of everything when it comes to Islam.
I don't know if this is a serious comment or not, but Ridwan Abdullah came into the chat. He said, "The book is for humankind, a mercy, unless you're not part of mankind and vile." Well, I'm going to assume that you just joined us and you didn't actually hear anything that we described, but I'll go ahead and repeat some examples for you, Ridwan. Is it a mercy for mankind that a child under 9 can be married to a man by her father without any input from her, and then the man who has married her, i.e. bought her, can do whatever he wants to her? Let me know if that is a mercy for mankind.
Oh
And
my
Mary will be
goodness.
right back,
You
which
know,
is
it's,
fine. Gives me a chance to finally put up some of these comments that I couldn't get up because she talks too much. Super chat from the Dashing Rogue. Some donation for the good work. Thank you very much for that donation. Carol asked, how is FGM a courtesy to the husband? And I don't know. The only thing that I can think of as why this would be a courtesy to the husband is it turns the woman into more of less desiring of having sex, so you can be confident that she doesn't want to have sex with someone other than you because she
she's
doesn't want
going
to
to
have
be a
sex with
virgin.
anyone.
She's going to remain a virgin for the man. And also that is to, so women, it also shows you that the hate in Islam of women, and also it shows you the oppression and the violence towards women because they perform these things, and it literally robs the woman of all pleasure. The only person who's getting pleasure in this situation is the man, not the woman. You don't exist.
Here's the crazy thing. Muhammad also taught Galen's two seeds theory. And the two seeds theory is that women and men both ejaculate liquids that create the baby. So he was teaching that women actually have to orgasm to have babies, even though he, because this was something that Galen, who is a Greek, imagine the difference between a society in which women should be cut so that they can't experience pleasure, and another society in which an argument is seriously made and is generally believed that women can't have children at all unless they have orgasms.
Oh my goodness. You know what? Those things, wow.
Definitely.
Like, let me tell you something. Like, if you look at the track records of Muhammad, you look at his life, and then you look at the life of Christ. You know, Jesus Christ is God who came in the flesh, right? If you look at the life of Muhammad and the way he lives his life and his laws and how he look at people and deals with people and divides humanity, Muhammad would be a great horror story writer. He would be a great horror story writer. But if you look at those two lives, even if Jesus Christ wasn't God, which he is God, somebody gives you a choice of these two characters, which one you're gonna follow? Whoever you follow shows your heart. That's if you do it knowingly. Many Muslims are burned into the religion, right? But those who already know the truth and you can make a decision and you're still sitting there saying that it is okay to marry a child, that should show you where your heart is, and that should tell you where you're going, and you better repent Because literally with comments like this, time is not on your side. You better repent and get it right with God. Because in our Bible, God told us, do not hurt these little ones. But in Islam, you can have sex with these little ones. Come on. Like, if I knew before I converted, if I knew what I know today, anyone in their right mind will reason. I'm sick of this. Like, I am sick of it. And these Muhammad followers, they are a bunch of cowards because they hide behind their keyboards and they say whatever they want to say. And again, it's the same thing that they do outside. They come behind you, you talk about the truth, they come surprise you and they stab you, just like they did, they do to many people. So
Definitely. You made a comment about them hiding behind their keyboards, and that's exactly what Reda One is doing. Galen knew nothing. A simple question. Where does babies come from? Whatever. You guys assume with no proofs from the Quran. Reda and I have posted the link to you personally and in a pinned comment in the chat as well. If you want to come up and talk with us, we can see how much we know and compared to how much you know about these so-called proofs from Quran. We probably know a bit more about Islam than you do, but maybe we're wrong. And maybe there is no need to reason without proof, as you said. And you can come up here and show us that we're wrong about Islam. You can defend your great God and your great prophet and show us how we're just Islamophobes who know nothing. This is your opportunity. Follow the link, come up and talk with us.
Thaddeus is US. They refuse to reason. Refuse to reason.
Indeed. If they were reasoning, they would not be Muslims.
Okay. I pulled up, if you'll share my screen, I pulled up the verse that describes marrying prepubescent girls. Oh, Prophet, when you divorce your women, divorce them at their iddah, prescribed periods, and count their iddah periods, and fear Allah, your Lord, and turn them not out of their husband's home, blah, 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 blah. Wait, where is those who have not yet? Oh, wait, I'm on the wrong one. Goodness, let me find it. Here it is. And those of your women who have passed the age of monthly courses, their iddah is 3 months. And for those who have no courses, their iddah is 3 months likewise. So those who have no courses, if you look at the Arabic, the form of the verb is this continuing form. So it's usually translated as those who have not yet menstruated. A very, very literal translation would be those having not menstruated. And we know that this is specifically about women who are immature, because we find out from all of the from the commentaries what the context is. So we find out those who in menopause and those who don't have menses. This is Ibn Kathir. Let me make this bigger for everybody. Ooh, nice and big. There we go. So this is about those whose menstruation has stopped due to older age. The same for the young who have not yet reached the years of menstruation. Every single reputable Islamic commentator understands that this is talking about the prepubescent, and only iddahs are prescribed for wives who have had sex. So if you haven't had sex, there's no iddah. You just send her on her way. She has no iddah. So this explicitly is saying that for those little girls who have never menstruated because they are so young, whom you have sexually penetrated, their iddah is this long. So, um, so they're talking about how he had Muhammad had already given a partial. Yes, there is no opinion. This is not my opinion, child. This is not my opinion. This is
Oh
the
my God.
this is the ruling
So,
of the Islamic scholars.
so
So
let me ask Redawan here. Well, first of all, why does your God give a waiting period for girls who haven't menstruated if they're not pregnant? And two, how is your opinion that you are reading into the verse more valid than the opinion of Ibn Kathir, al-Tabri, al-Qurtubi, whoever else we go to? We can go to any classic tafsir whatsoever. They're going to say the same thing. They all agree that that this verse is about girls who are too young to have menstruated and they are now being divorced by their husbands, which means one, they had to be married, and two, they had to have sex or there would be no waiting period.
yep, and then here is the hadith that's about this. So again, this is Ibn Kathir saying that the same for the young who have not yet reached the years of menstruation. That's Ibn Kathir. That's not me. Go down here and we'll find out that for Allah's really stupid and he forgets what he ought to tell people. And so one of the things that happened is that Allah was telling people about how long people should wait, and he just forgot to tell them what to do about these women who don't menstruate. So Sa'id ibn Jubair said, or excuse me, that Ubay ibn Ka'b said to Muhammad, "Oh Allah's messenger, some women were not mentioned in the Quran, the young, the old, and the pregnant." So now that Allah has gotten this reminder from Ibn Ka'b, which he apparently needed very badly, Allah remembered to reveal the next part of his Quran, which is eternal. And so he revealed this portion. So this portion is about the women who are not mentioned in the Quran, considering their iddah, the young, the old, and the pregnant. So this is specifically about married women who have had intercourse with their husbands who do not menstruate because they are, what does it say? Young. There are three classes: the old, the young, and the pregnant. There are three classes in the verse. The old, the young, and the pregnant again. You have past the age, that's the old. For those who have not yet menstruated, those are the young. And then finally it says, until they lay down their burdens, is the pregnant. Right there, same categories. Young, old, pregnant, that Allah accidentally forgot to include the first time when he was giving instructions. How forgetful of him.
You mean Muhammad?
Well, is there a difference between Allah and Muhammad? That's the real
Allah is the imaginary one. You know, you got this, you know, and the one that Muhammad created. So everything is Allah said, right?
So yeah, exactly. The funny part is, of course, that Muhammad's scribes they regularly made suggestions for changing the Quran, and he's like, "Yep, sounds better." And then they're like, "Wait a minute, I just changed the Quran, the supposed eternal word of Allah. Am I a prophet?" And then they apostatized. But Godilah earlier asked about the occasion of the verse 65:4, and I think that's what you just gave, right? That Muhammad was reminded that he didn't cover these certain classes, and then Allah revealed 65:4.
Yep. Yeah. So that is according to all the classical scholars, the reason why 65:4 came down is someone asked about the little bitty girls who were having sex with their husbands. Now it was common in the culture before this time and in lots of cultures, because neither girls nor boys have really had any say about who they married, that marriages would be arranged from birth. But that did not mean that intercourse was normative before birth. I don't think that they had little baby girls, adult men having sex with little baby girls until Muhammad. There's some very good reasons to think that this was not part of the culture and that Muhammad introduced it.
So is everything else he introduced to please himself? And
Yeah.
it's still going on today. This is still being practiced today. Muhammad marries 11 wives, and they still marry them today. So he's actually becoming a broken record.
Yeah, so Redouan said, only certain people will know certain things. The verses talk about women and not children. Redouan, what is your certain person who knows that this is about women? Because every single classic scholar of Islam knew this was about children or women who hadn't yet reached puberty. So do tell us what certain person knows that.
He's lying to cover it up. He's just doing what is, good for Islam. He knows the truth. He knows the truth, but he cannot say the truth because he's so afraid he thinks he's going to go to hell.
But Allah can't send anyone to hell because Allah doesn't exist. Anyway, his fruit's in hell too. So
yeah, he's going to go to hell anyways if he still think like this and follow Allah, who doesn't really exist. You're following Muhammad. Oh, these two just complicates everything.
Yeah. He just, and of course, Muhammad had a big list of prerogatives that other men were not allowed to have. And that's supposed to be proof that he's a prophet. My question is, how is he different from any other false prophet? Because it's the first thing that happens when you have a false prophet is that he begins making prophecies about his own penis. Like, that is incredibly common. If you're making prophecies about your penis, you're not a prophet. I'll just go out and say that because, Jim Joe, all these different people are making David Koresh, all of the fake gurus in India who run these crazy cults where they get stupid white chicks to come and be enlightened with their penis again. It always ends up being about their penis somehow. So that's like the number one sign of a false prophet is that a lot of his prophecies have to do with his junk. And a huge number of Muhammad's prerogatives were either that he got to be rich, right? Or he got to have sex with people that normally one would not get to have sex with. So he specifically had a prerogative to marry all of his cousins that he wanted to marry. He had another prerogative that if he lusted after a woman, that her husband had to divorce her and so that he could have sex with her. Because nikah just means sex, and it doesn't even mean that they'll stay married. And it's really interesting because there's specifically a hadith about Aisha talking about how she used to despise the women who gave themselves to Muhammad. And my question is, oh, really? Who are these women? Because these women do not make the list of his wives. The only woman who, quote, offered herself to Muhammad that he actually married was that, and then had intercourse with, was his daughter-in-law.
His adopted son, wife,
Zainab, which made it according to all the standards of the time, that would be incest. So he had that incestuous marriage, but when he married her, it wasn't when she was offering herself. So that means there are other women who are offering themselves to Muhammad, and he was having nikah with, and then they just did not remain a wife. Another point is that the word nisa, whenever you look in the Quran, does not mean wife. It just means does not mean a woman as in an adult. It just means a female. If you look, for example, about where it talks about killing the male infants and then letting the females live, at the time of Moses, the word that's used there is nisa, again, just for female, not for an adult woman. So it says, and then they killed your males and let the nisa live. And so it doesn't mean an adult female. It just means a female, period. That's all it means. Because there it's talking about infants right at birth, being killed at birth.
So Lloyd is still watching apparently, and he encouraged me to bring the Sharia back up since our friend here wanted us to. Wanted it in quotes here. TRS Cartoons has joined the chat. I'm going to leave him in the waiting room for a minute here, but we'll bring him up in a second. So here are the sources of Pakistani law include the Hidayah and the Digest of Mohammedan Law, Principles of Mohammedan Law. Here is a passage from one of those books. This is part of Pakistani law. When a man has had sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 9 years old, he goes to jail. Oh wait, no, that's not what it says. And has ruptured the parts, it is unlawful for him. Oh, okay, it's unlawful for him to have further connection with her, but she's not released from her ties. In other words, she's still required to be married to him. He just isn't allowed to have sex with her anymore because he destroyed her private parts. What an amazing mercy here. Oh, but that was just Pakistan. They're really screwed up, right? Let's look at what the Reliance of the Traveler says. First of all, there's no waiting period for a woman divorced before having sexual intercourse with her husband. All fine and good. Wait a minute. How does that relate to 65.4? A waiting period is obligatory for a woman divorced after intercourse, whether the husband and the wife are prepubescent, have reached puberty, or one has and the other has not. And just in case there's any doubt, intercourse means copulation. So if the wife is prepubescent and the husband has sex with her, if the husband is prepubescent and the woman has sex with him, or they're both prepubescent, doesn't matter. There's a waiting period, which means what? What does that mean, Redouane? That means that sex before puberty, marriage before puberty is legal. And it's right here in the Sharia. But, this is just some people's opinions, some opinion about something, apparently. Continuing, when a woman has been made love to, she has to perform the purificatory bath. She must repeat ghusl if two conditions exist. She is not a child, but rather old enough to have sexual gratification. Congratulations, underage girls who've been forced to have sex with their husband. You are exempt from mandatory washing after having sex with your husband. Congratulations. Islam is a mercy. And I probably should have read that. Also, from Reliance, a full indemnity is paid for injuries which paralyze these members, or for injuries to the peritoneal wall between the vagina and the rectum, so they become one aperture. So, another mercy. When the little girl has her body destroyed by her husband trying to penetrate her when she's a tiny little child, she gets monetary compensation. Isn't Islam so amazing, so merciful to the women?
So disgusting to mankind.
But here's a second opinion on that obligatory washing. If a person has sexual intercourse with a minor girl, ghusl will not be obligatory on her, but in order to get her into the habit, she should be made to bath. So it's not obligatory, but go ahead and make her do it anyway so she gets in the habit. So that when you continue to have sex with her and she reaches puberty, then she'll already be in the habit of doing the ritual bath and she won't have a problem with continuing to do it. Amazing, amazing stuff here. If a woman is underage, but not so small that if one has intercourse with her, there is a fear of the vaginal tissues tearing to such an extent that the vagina and anus will virtually become together, then by the insertion of the glands of the penis into her vagina, ghusl will become fard on the man if he has reached the age of puberty. So just so you know, if the man has reached puberty and the girl hasn't, he still has to do the obligatory washing. Islam thinks of everything, and this is covered in great detail. But of course, we don't know anything. We're just making stuff up because we're Islamophobic or whatever.
Yeah.
It adds in parentheses, however, if there is aforementioned fear in a very minor girl, then the mere insertion of the penis does not render ghusl obligatory. So in other words, if the girl is so tiny that you are afraid of tearing her and you have to just barely just put the tip in just only, then no worries, no mandatory washing. This is the Sharia. This is the beautiful Sharia law that we Islamophobic people just do not understand.
And I am so tired of that word, Islamophobe. Like, that is so reversed. Like Crimea River. Because right now, I think the persecution is on the church and Christians.
So we're going to go ahead and bring TRS Cartoons in here. Hello, TRS Cartoons.
Hello.
Welcome. We already know your position that there's nothing wrong with having sex with minors. So you're consistent with the Quran.
You're cutting out.
Heavy breathing.
Yeah, I know. Like,
There's a lot of background noise on your end.
it's actually
I'm
creepy,
outside.
very creepy.
Yeah, it's wind or something.
Yes, wind. I'm outside.
That's better. Yeah, could you keep yourself on mute when you're not talking because it's super loud and you're being assaulted by a cat?
Okay.
So what did you want to say?
Well, I don't know.
Well,
Have you listened to that third testament I give you? Since you
alrighty. He
Hey,
doesn't
get
know
him
what he
off.
wants to say, so I muted him.
Distraction.
We also have Hawk Ducking, an ex-Muslim. Welcome, Hawk. Or not.
I think
So
it's muted. All
No,
right.
he jumped off as soon as
Yeah.
I added him.
Well, he may have just lost connection.
Yeah, I don't think he did intentionally. But
Well,
either way, he disconnected. So TRS, if you think of what you wanted to say, go ahead and unmute yourself. But we don't want to just listen to a bunch of background noise if you have nothing to say.
Okay.
So we have also Khalid came into the chat, and I welcome
have you
him.
listened to that third testament I give you? A
There is
link
no third
to?
testament. There is no third
I
testament.
believe there is. I'm a prophet of it.
oh no.
Okay.
Are you the guy who thinks that your father was a prophet?
Whose father was a prophet?
Or do you just think you're a prophet? Do you think your dad
I
was
just think I'm a
next
prophet.
Muhammad?
Oh my God, you're so lost.
No,
But it's just you're a prophet.
you're all lost. You're going to hell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
you're bad kids.
Alrighty.
You sound like you're in hell right now, the way you're breathing.
I went ahead and
think
kicked
that
him
was
out.
Just
Because-
wind, though, because if it was just wind, then it would not be.
I know, right?
I mean, if he was, coming up and trying to defend Islam or whatever, I would have let him speak, even though he's clearly crazy. But if he's going to try to get us into his cult he founded, bye-bye.
He's a prophet.
Well, there's a really interesting guy who thinks that he's the next prophet after Muhammad, or his dad was next prophet after Muhammad. And I was wondering because I've talked to him before, and he's constantly everywhere trying to convert people to. And the funny thing is, you know how whenever they do the paraphrases and translation of the Quran, that they have like quotations that they put over the added words. Well, his father put the same quotations in his own thing. But why would you be paraphrasing your own prophetic text? Why would you be adding words, right? Because these are supposed to be the actual words. So he didn't know what those parentheses or the quotation brackets are in Quranic translations, and was just trying to imitate the style. It's hilarious.
Mary, but listen to this, Mary.
Yeah.
Think about this. It's logical. Why is these people here? Why is he in this Christian channel? It's because you have questions. There's no reason for a Muslim to come to any of these Christian channels to listen to these things unless that part of you is nagging you. You have questions. You have questions, my brother. You doubt. He's doubting, but he cannot say it. He can't say it.
Yep.
Some strange people on the live stream. Indeed.
Oh,
So Khalid keeps saying comments like here, "Hey, Lloyd, you are too an Islamophobe. Khalid, come up and talk with us live.
Leoid.
We'd love you." Also, earlier, Doomed came in here and said, "Blind sisters, can I share with you about the channel on which Muslims and Christians have debate instead of spreading Islamophobia?"
Islamophobe. What is the definition of Islamophobe? If you look at really what's going on in this world, Muslims are the one who is hurting, killing, stabbing, not Christians. Christians are spreading the gospel. They're trying to tell you that God loves you. Like, Islamophobe what?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, cry me a river, like, get away with that. Like, I am sick of that. Like, Islamophobe, my foot.
Yeah.
So I also invited Doom up. So we've now invited like 4 Muslims up to come and talk to us. None of them wanted to. Doomed even said that he wanted a channel where Muslims and Christians can have debate. He can come up and have debate with us. You're supposedly blind sisters. He can come up and have debate. Oh, no. As soon as I said that, he disappeared. He left
Why
chat.
does it have to be blind sisters? Why can't he say blind Thaddeus over there? Why does it have to be me
they're
and
wanting
Mary?
to love jihadists. That's why. They have this weird obsession with women. Like,
I know, they do. It's sick.
there was this guy in my DMs for a month and a half trying to love jihad me, and I just kept sending him a hadith and asking him to explain them and things like that. It was hilarious. Anyway, if you'll share my screen, I have another fabulous hadith that I'd love for a Muslim to explain to me. So there was a woman who came to complain to Muhammad because of the treatment that her husband gave her. So, Messenger of Allah, my husband beats me when I pray and makes me break my fast when I keep a fast. Now, what is meant by this, makes me break my fast? It means he rapes her. Mm-hmm. Because a fast is broken when you have sex. He wasn't jamming food into her mouth. He was raping her. And this will be clearer later, right? And he does not offer the dawn prayer until sun rises. So, Muhammad went to his warrior Safwan compared to, this useless woman who's just there to please the man, right? He asked Safwan, who was present, about what she had said. He replied, he beats me when I pray is because she recites 2 surahs during prayer, and I prohibit her from doing so. So you get extra benefits if you recite more during prayer. But the husband forbids the wife from doing this. He's forbidding her from receiving the benefits given to people for recitation. And so he beats her for it. So the Prophet said, if 1 surah is recited, that's sufficient. So he's telling her, it's enough to do 1 surah. You don't have to do 2. So now, because your husband doesn't want you to have these benefits, because you're not busy helping around the house, but instead you're doing extra surahs and he wants to beat you for it, well, you need to listen to him. So he is saying that the husband was right to beat his wife for reciting 2 surahs, and that she is wrong to want the benefits and the greater possibility of going to Jannah and the greater reward in Jannah because her husband doesn't want her to, and pleasing him is really her only reason for existence, right? And makes me break my fast. She dotes on fasting. I am a young man and cannot restrain myself. That is, he rapes her. Oh, you want to fast today? Well, I need to have my sex. I cannot restrain myself. So what does Messenger of Allah say? A woman should not fast except with the permission of her husband. So women already cannot fast if they are menstruating. They are not permitted to fast. And you can't make up, you just lose the benefits of that fasting you don't do. Like you don't accrue punishments for not doing it, but you do lose all the benefits. You cannot make up that time if your husband doesn't want you to, because you get no benefits. And in fact, you get sins if you fast without your husband's permission, because your husband's penis is more important than your salvation. So here is the rank in Islam. Muhammad's penis, other men's penises, women. Down here with dogs and donkeys.
You have a way with words, Mary. You have a way with words. This was from earlier, but very appropriate, from Red One, who gave up on trying to convince us we were wrong because we had all the sources and he had none. He resorted to insults. He said, "You girls love speaking of penis, sex, and child abuse. You belong to the streets." So let me just get this from you. Do you love talking about Muhammad's penis and Muslim men's penises? And do you love talking about child abuse? Or do you do this for a different reason? I'll start with you, Hadija. Hadja.
Me?
Sorry.
Wow. For him to make that comment is like sickening. It makes me want to puke. No one wants to talk about Muhammad's. I don't even want to say the word. The only reason why we're talking about these things is to shed light on this darkness. And maybe a person out there can really reason, really think, and save themselves and save their children, especially their little girls. This is not a joke. But the Hadith and the Quran is full of perversions that is something that you just think this is not normal. It should not be in the book that Allah wrote. So no, nobody likes to talk about it, and nobody wants to talk about it. But we have to talk about it. It has to come out of the closet, and it's coming out. And you know what? The biggest mistake that Islam has ever made is to try to spread Islam in the West, because people here are more educated now. People are more educated nowadays, and people are researching. Now, all the dirty laundry of the Quran and Hadith is out. Before, it wasn't out. Everything was hidden. But now, the more you try to spread Islam, the more we're going to know the dirty laundry of Muhammad. So if you don't want the dirty laundry to be talked about, don't try to preach Islam. Stay on your little corner and pray and practice it by yourself. And stop lying to the West. Stop lying to people. That's why people who convert to Islam don't last in Islam. Because they go in without knowing the truth. But then when you go in, you have to live by their book, which they weren't expecting, and they exit out. And all of a sudden, their life is at stake. People are like walking around afraid of, what would a Muslim will do if I say something? I dare you. Like, I've been through too much throughout my childhood for me to take any rubbish from Muslim keyboard jihadis or anybody out there. So stop hiding behind your keyboards. Stop hiding behind your knives and your bombs and whatever you're hiding from. Face the person, face the people, just like Christians are facing you and trying to talk to you. Face, they cannot do that. Everything has to be a show. So you know what? People used to fear what Islam may do, but that fear is going away because people are learning the truth. So keep trying to spread Islam. Go ahead, sister. These people just make my stomach sick.
Yeah, so Mary, what about you? Surely you love speaking about penises and sex and child abuse.
Well, my question would be, why did Muhammad talk about it so much? Because all of these things are Islamic sources. And Muhammad talked about it absolutely constantly. He was constantly talking about penises. Like literally the first supposed revelation he had was just it was just rehashed Galen, right? Actually, it was doing Aristotle's theory above Galen, and later he mixed in Galen's. Like, the clot was all about human reproduction. So from the beginning, Muhammad was absolutely obsessed with sex. There are huge amounts in there about who Muhammad can have sex with and how he gets to have sex with all these people. There are huge things in there about how, because Allah decided. So according to Judaism, God can make his people whomever he wills, right? He could raise sons for himself out of rocks if he chose to be Israel, to be his followers and his children if he chose. God has this power. And this relationship of being the child of God is what the relationship between God and mankind is when it's in its proper place. We are to be God's rulers on earth, but also his extended family, his children. And so this child language of adoptive child, between the relation between God our Father and us as his adopted children, absolutely fundamental both to Judaism and then elaborated even more in Christianity. But you come to Muhammad and he declares that Allah is not a father to anyone in any sort of way, and that adoption itself is illegitimate, even though the idea of a non genetic link was fundamental before, that there is a kind of childness that is not a genetic childness according to God. All this time he goes, no, no. The only kind of childness there is in in a legally bought private part of a woman that you impregnate with your own seed, and if that comes out, then that is your son. You can't have adoption anymore. We've destroyed adoption. So Christianity is, you have the right now to become sons and daughters of God through adoption. And Islam, there is no adoption period for anyone. That doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist because Muhammad. And so how does Allah reveal to all of us that this shouldn't exist? He makes Muhammad want to have sex with his legal daughter, which would be incest, according to the Jews, according to the Christians, according to anybody else. Having sex with your legal daughter, your adopted son's wife, that is incest. But Allah inspired lust, the zina of the eyes and the zina of the heart, in Muhammad just to get rid of adoption. Like, and that's in the Quran. So yeah, we have to talk about his penis, because his penis causes there to be particular verses in the Quran. Without Muhammad's enormous lust, we wouldn't have all these verses, now would we? And without the lust of his people, you never would have had muta marriage, right? His followers were super lustful. They were always having sex when they weren't supposed to. And the ways he was trying to get around, like condemning them all to death, like that became a big part of the Quran and the Ahadith. So, yeah.
I don't even know how I'm going to have my lunch today. This is
But just to be fair, Khalid did insult me as well. You know, I pointed out that he insulted you guys, but he insulted me as well. He said, "Oh, so you are here unreasoned answers." Real creative there, real creative. You know, if we're so dumb and unreasonable and we don't have any clue, just come up and embarrass us. It's really not.
Why are they even watching?
Yeah.
Like if I put something and if I put something on the channel and I see it's not interesting for me, I'm going to turn it off. So obviously they want to hear your reason. Talk.
Yeah. So Red One said, you only expose your own dirty laundry. That's strange. I believe I was quoting from Islamic sources. I don't follow those. Therefore, they're not my dirty laundry. I do agree they are dirty laundry, though. So thank you for admitting that what I read and exposed was dirty laundry. Kim says, no, we actually get sick of talking about this stuff, but it always seems to get your attention, though. Yeah, interesting that Muslim men are always coming into these chats when the topic is sexual related. You know, they don't come into all my streams necessarily, but they always all show up whenever it has anything to do with sex. Interesting stuff. So this was said earlier, but it related to what you just were talking about, Mary. Ashok says, stage 4 embryology, in like Ellen in the Quran 23:14. And earlier, I know I saved a comment on it. Well, it's I don't have to read the exact comment. Maybe I didn't save it. But there was a plug for my talk on Toronto apologetics with Tony Costa about embryology in the Quran. So check that out if you're interested and see that the so-called scientific miracle of the Quran was in fact just copying, paraphrasing Greek ideas that were wrong.
Copy and paste.
But Ashok did come up with an actual scientific miracle of Islam. He said that the verses and material we were reading prove that Islam discovered pornography 1400 years before Europe and the United States combined. And we know this is credible because he cited a witness, Osama Dakdok. Just a couple comments and then we'll close out. This was earlier, but I thought it was worth clarifying. Get Thee Down said, if some homosexuality is recent, why mention at the time of the flood? Earth is recently created. So this was in reference to you, Mary, saying that homosexuality was a recent thing. I know what you mean, but go ahead and explain it yourself.
I'll explain that very briefly. So basically the idea that people have sexual orientations as like orientation itself is a very unusual concept, and the idea that some people are homosexual as an orientation, as a sexuality, other than a few people who thought that Plato made up something like that, and a few people thought that he was probably right, but for the most part that was a foreign concept. What we now call homosexuality was a behavior or a vice, and not something like an orientation. So the word homosexuality carries baggage of orientation, and that's just how you are, and all this other stuff that did not exist until the late 18th century or early 19th century. The first sexologist, who was a communist and wanted to destroy the family, introduced the idea. So yes, it's Sodom and Gomorrah, activities of same-sex intercourse did happen, and that did exist for a very long time. And it wasn't mentioned the time before the flood. I assume you just mean Sodom and Gomorrah. But but that isn't what is now considered to be sexual orientations. This is recent concepts, recent languages. Lots of societies don't even have an idea that men can have sex with other men. Like a quarter of all societies don't even know that that's an option, much less that would be a preference. So that's very short.
Yeah. So the difference between behavior, specific sex acts, and this idea that it's a mindset, that there's a sexual preference. That's what the difference is. And many ancient societies did practice homosexual sex, but none of them had the concept that it was different or that it was replacing sex with females. Like they didn't have a concept of gay marriage. They practiced gay sex, but they didn't practice gay marriage, because marriage is a contract, if you will, between a man and a woman. They had no idea that you're just a homosexual who wants to marry men. That's the difference. Ashok also asked, is this homo thing practiced in Saudi today, or in the past. Any knowledge on the rate of homosexual sex in Saudi Arabia, Mary?
Yeah, incredibly, incredibly high. One thing that happens very commonly is that if you have a society that turns women into objects, because women are supposed to be the ezer of their husbands, help or not in the sense of happy little assistant, it means help in the sense of without which you are helpless. The only other being in the Bible to be described as being someone's help is God. So that kind of level of companion, corresponding, uh, equal intellectually and equal in terms of emotional reciprocity. Whenever you degrade women so that they become objects, then and they're no longer considered to be the subject of a true relationship. They're only there to be your field and get pregnant and have your babies and take care of your house. Then, very often, you have societies that become highly homoerotic and inappropriately transfer things that ought to be shared between husband and wife to between men instead, because a woman is so degraded. This was also the case in ancient Athens, where it was considered that women, they were deprived of education, they were constrained to their household too, and so you had the same kind of phenomenon happen. So right now in Saudi Arabia, it has incredibly high levels of homosexual activity, and just talking about people as being gay in Saudi is again not entirely, because the Western conception of gayness is only starting to pervade in that area. But the idea that there are lots of men who have sex with other men, yeah, it's all over the place in Saudi. It's incredibly prevalent, and not really stigmatized at all. It's just done in secret. They're the number one consumers per capita of pornography as a whole, but also of gay porn. So just to give you some idea of the environment there.
And I can humorous little story. Telegram is not very regulated. You can kind of just spam anything you want on channels unless the owner of the channel stops people. And every time someone would come in with a spam bot promoting pornography, they'd be have an Arabic name. Coincidence? I don't know. Redwin said, "Are women in Islam is protected by the Quran unless you can show me an explicit verse otherwise." Redwin, that's not how things work. It's not that you can assume protection unless you have a verse otherwise. Are you saying that the Quran protects corn from being eaten? I mean, there's no verse in the Quran that says you can't eat corn, or says that you can eat corn, I mean. So that means that there is implicit protection and it's forbidden for you. No, that's not how it works. You know this. Use your brain. Show us a verse in the Quran where women are protected.
Oh, I can show you a verse where they're hurt if they don't do things. So
Okay.
share my screen. It's lots of fun. Oh, prophet, say to your wives and your daughters, and the women of the believers are the females of the believers, to draw over themselves their outer garments. That is more suitable, that they should be known. What? So the women of the believers have to cover. Why? So that they are known. So you know who they are, and so that they are not harmed, hurt. Hurt. Most of these are translated as hurt. So if women of the believers are not covered, this says that they will be hurt. So the only way that they're protected is they're protected by covering up, because if they get mistaken for someone else, they'll be hurt by whom? This is Muslim men. Muslim men are going to hurt the women who aren't covered enough. So your women in Islam is protected only in the sense that if she covers up enough, then maybe she won't be assaulted. But if she does get assaulted, then clearly it's because she wasn't covered up enough. There you go.
So there you go, an explicit verse of the Quran that says women are not protected. Even though it was an unreasonable request, we met it anyway. Oh, but he says learn the word explicit, girl. That's not explicit for him, so that doesn't count. Because it didn't say women are not protected in those exact words. He uses the exact word criteria.
It's just such childishness, foolishness from these Muslims. They have a corrupt book, a corrupt and disgusting fake prophet, and they want to play word games. They will not defend Muhammad from what he actually did. They want to play games. So again, women are not hurt if what? What do women need to do to keep from getting hurt, Redwan, according to that verse? Why should women cover? So that why? Explicitly, it says women cover so that they are not what? Go ahead, write it in Arabic.
Harmed.
Go for
Harmed.
it.
That's not explicit though.
But they still get harmed, even covered.
Yeah, because it says that because Allah has written for everything to happen, and so if you get harmed, then clearly you weren't actually covered up enough. And there are other things that say that women who are veiled but are still like they are naked. There's a hadith about this, that the women who are actually physically covered but who are still like they are uncovered in some way. That means perfume. Specifically, it says if they wear their hair with a hump in the back, I guess even if they have really big hair naturally, oh well, then they will be in the hellfire. So these women, there is a category of women who are, even though they are overtly clothed, do not count as being covered up. So if you feel lust for a woman, it's obviously because Allah has written the zina for you, and it's because the woman isn't covered up enough, like obviously.
Exactly. Gabriel summed it up well. Because Muslim men have no self-control. That's kind of what everything is about today. Question earlier from our Kitsune. Do you guys know the hadith about Muhammad being jumped by dark-skinned men? What is up with those?
Yeah, I do. It's a Shia hadith. The Sunnis are so embarrassed by this that they purged it. And Muhammad would have dreams in which he was gang raped by angels, like demon angels, like or they were shaitans, right? So they were from the tribe of jinn, and he would be jinn raped at night and walk around with difficulty the next day because his butt still hurt. There, I'm not kidding, and yeah. So because this happened in his sleep and his dreams, and apparently this affected him the next day. There's also a really interesting hadith about Aisha catching him with a really, really beautiful young man in his house, and they were together, and apparently the young man had a bit of a reputation, and he said, "Oh no, that was just Gabriel who came to me in the shape of that man." Kind of interesting.
Very interesting indeed. Another question. So now, is it good to rape captive women because Muhammad allowed it?
Did not just allow, specifically said that they should not restrain themselves.
So I guess that's yes, because Muhammad's the perfect example. So we have Satya. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey guys. Good afternoon.
Welcome to the chat.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Well, definitely this is a very, very important topic, and I think the petrodollar that has creeped in, especially in the Western world, has been portraying Islam how peaceful it is, and how progressive it is, and how it has determined the equal rights for each and every individuals, which is actually not true. You know, when you get into Quran or Sirah or Hadith, you know, all of those things actually tells you a very, very different story. And when you look into the Sharia law, we as an Indian, we are actually fighting, for equal rights. We're actually fighting for Muslim women in India. We have just banned triple talaq, so it was just an instant divorce. Like you can give divorce over a text message, over a phone. Just you need to say talaq, talaq, talaq 3 times, and you are divorced. Which is very, very, discriminatory in itself. For half of the world's population, which is a female. So we banned it, and Islamic organizations are still fighting for it in India. When you see there is a movement against a hijab or any kind of burqa in the Western world, or that to Iran and the other places of Islamic world, here in India, the Islamists and those mullahs, they're actually fighting to determine that that should be the right thing for the women to do. Things like that. So in India, there is still a law under a Sharia law for Muslims women, if they get divorced, they have no right to keep their kids with them. I mean, can you imagine having this kind of a law and calling it equal and peaceful? No. So I think it's very, very important that these narratives, the narratives which is actually true and which is actually right and progressive, needs to be there in the world, because the petrol, as I said before, the petrodollar has already creeped in all the bigger medias. The academia and everything is filled by this communist and this Islamist, because they both believe in totalitarian idea. They don't let other opinion take place in a society. They all believe that either it's their way or highway or no way, whatever you guys call it.
Yeah, definitely. That, Islam is a system of political dominance. Obviously, that wasn't the subject today, but ultimately that's what it boils down to. And so, Muslims, even when they're a small minority like they are in India, they think they have the right to establish whatever laws they want. And if you have different laws, it's because you are discriminating against them. They want their laws to be imposed on the other 95% of the population. And that's because law can't change in Islam. Law is sacred. Law is part of Islam. There is no changing the law. There is no updating things. There is no modernizing Islam. There is only doing something different and pretending that it's Islam. The reformer will always go back to what Muhammad did, which is that law and society and his word ultimately is undeniable. Whatever he said goes.
Yep. And someone said law is deen, and actually that is literally true, that law is deen. A lot of times that's translated as religion, but it really means a code, specifically a religious code, but it means code. And it's borrowed from Persian, ancient Persian, in a complicated way. So Redwan challenges me, quit deleting him all the time. Oh wait, I guess Lloyd's deleting him because he isn't returning with an answer. So what man came with revelation, which exists today, except Muhammad? There are tons of people, tons of cults, so many cults that say that they have revelation. Jim Jones came with a revelation. Joseph Smith came with a revelation. Why should we believe Muhammad and not any of these other false prophets? Again, if you come and prophesy about your penis, that's the number one sign that you're a false prophet. If a lot of your stuff is about who all these people you can have sex with and how you get to have all this sex. So yes, there are many, 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 many people who have claimed to be prophets, both before Muhammad and after Muhammad. Many people. So give me one good reason, Redwan, why Muhammad is a true prophet and Joseph Smith is not.
Yeah, it's a good
So,
question because
uh,
not every single religion claims to have a revelation, but most do. And there are 3,000 or so recognized religions in the world. So, what man came with a revelation that the religion still exists today except for Muhammad? Well, just off the top of my head, I'd say about 2,500 men. So, there you go. Guess they're all true prophets according to the logic of a red one.
Isn't it funny to say that, you know what, like your thought that whatever you were saying is right and whatever I'm thinking is wrong? Isn't that funny that like means that you're saying that your prophet is a prophet and everybody else is false prophet? I mean, this is really funny. And you want us to believe that your prophet is the real prophet and everything else that came after him or before him is false.
Yeah, the double standard is real.
oh, and
Hypocrisy.
yeah, if you'd share my screen, specifically on the beating of women, we didn't talk that much about Hajjah's history with spousal abuse and domestic violence. This is not only allowed by Islam, but is basically said not to be any kind of bad thing in terms of it will not be a sin on the final day, right? So Ibn Qais says that he was a guest at the home of Umar one night. And in the middle of the night, he went and hid his wife, and I separated them. So in the middle of the night, Umar got up and started beating his wife. So this guy heard it and or saw it and came and stopped him. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you beating your wife? And then Umar got mad at him. When he went to bed, he said to me, "Oh, Ash'ath, learn from me something that I heard from the messenger of Allah. A man should not be asked why he beats his wife, and do not go to sleep before you prayed the witr." So a man, and that should is not even, if you look over here, we find out that there are other things like this. So no man shall be asked for the reason of beating his wife. So this is a prerogative of a man that cannot be questioned. You can't even say, why did you hit her? Was it a good reason or not? No, it cannot be questioned. And this asked for the reason of beating his wife. Remember that in Islam, you will, on the final day, be asked by Allah about all of your sins. Will you be asked about beating your wife when you face Allah? No, that is in a category of things that Allah will not ask you about. No man will be asked ever about the reason of beating his wife, because it is not a sin to beat your wife. Now, of course, Muhammad in another time said that the best among them are those who treat their wives well. But that still doesn't mean that actually beating your wife is a sin in any way, because it's not a sin to Allah. You never have to answer for it on the day of judgment, and you cannot be asked by other men why you have battered and beaten your wife. So that's what Muhammad taught. That's who Muhammad was. You can go ahead and take that back. I'm just going back to the stream.
I have a take on it. I would definitely say this comes from an idea when you see that Allah created men, right? Adam, and then when Adam was getting bored, right? He has nothing to do. He's getting bored. He created a woman out of his something from the chest, no, a chest flesh. So technically, the women do not have a soul, because Allah did not, created men and women equally. Do you know what I'm trying to say here? So the creation of a woman in Islam itself, it treats women as a second class.
Well,
treat women, treat a body who does not have a soul.
So that's what some of the Gnostics said. According to, if you look at the the Bible that Jews and Christians believe, right? It says that the reason that a woman was created was because there was no suitable helper. And again, this is a special word that means like without which you are helpless. It doesn't mean an assistant. It's a totally separate word. That the man had, he had no one corresponding to him, is what it says. There's a special word for like being face to face with someone who is of the same type, like a mirror type of thing. And that is why woman was created, because of all the beings that there was no being that corresponded to the man. So the lesson from that is that the woman was created from the man because she is the same substance. So she's not, and from his side. So she wasn't created from his feet to be trodden down on him. She wasn't created from his head to rule him, but from his side to be his corresponding part. And the lesson is that, whenever you surveyed creation, there was no correspondence to man. You cannot find, whenever people say dog is man's best friend, God says no. When in Islam they say that a woman is like a donkey or a dog, God says no. The woman is the corresponding help without whom men are helpless. But Islam went and took it and said that she's created from a rib, and that means that she has a crooked head because ribs are bent, and the top part is the most bent part of the rib, and it's the most bent part of the woman. Like, they took something that was remarkable. If you looked at the cultural context of the times, you can't find anyone saying this about women, that they are the correspondence of, and this high status, but and of the same substance with. So you can't say that women are like, a lot of creation stories said that women are made from this and men are made from this other thing. But this is saying that no, they're one substance and they are the corresponding one to the other. But Islam took it and of course twisted it, messed it up, just like when there was when Adam and Eve are ejected from the garden. There are curses in the Bible given to the serpent first, Eve second, and Adam third. And later in the Bible, Adam is given the blame for the fall, that by Adam's sin, all fell, etc. But in Islam, Adam doesn't get a curse, and he's just said to be tricked. Like, he doesn't actually really, like, yeah, he sinned, but he was tricked, so it's not really his fault, so he doesn't get any curses. Like, everything's taken and twisted and turned sideways and just made sick and evil.
Definitely. Take a couple more comments from the audience and then we'll close out. Earlier, we read that one. John says the rape victims are being shut down by Allah and Muhammad himself. Where is the justice if Allah is true? Where is the justice indeed? That's a theme of the day, because you can say it's illegal in Islam all you want, and even that's debatable. But if there's no way to be punished for it because you need witnesses and then the victim themselves is more likely to get punished, where is the justice indeed? Do they use modern technology to prove if a woman was raped? So
No.
In no Muslim countries do they use forensic science, as far as you know?
No, not for rape. Anything that falls under the Islamic law, it has to be the Sunnah of the Prophet. So that would not be considered evidence. You need your witnesses. Muhammad said witnesses, period. He didn't say
5 male witnesses. So their male portion is very important. So they need 5 male witnesses, as if So that part is very, very important. That here is because they don't want any kind of other evidences. I mean, Islam in general do not consider the other half as important as the other half of the world. No.
Exactly. Yeah, if you only have female witnesses, that's not going to be good enough. You need female witnesses.
Yeah, I think only 2 female witnesses count as a male, but I don't think that you can substitute all the females. That is correct. I think that you can only swap out. I think you can have 3 men and 2 women, but I think if you have 8 women, if you have no male witnesses whatsoever, that might not be allowed, even at the double counting women. Because there are things in Sharia that says you can substitute a male witness for 2 women.
Yeah, this actually makes it impossible for the victim to have any sort of help, because it's literally impossible for witnesses to be there while someone is getting raped.
Definitely. Yeah, you don't usually commit a rape and on the street corner or something
That's why
where
it's a
people can
rape.
see you.
It's forced, but they make it impossible. So that right there tells you it's impossible for the woman to get help.
So he never returns his horse says, am I mistaken? I keep hearing modern Muslim apologists making declarations about how Islam raises the status of women. It doesn't seem to add up. Doesn't seem to add up indeed. What are your thoughts, Hajjah, on the status of women in Islam? Do you think that Muhammad elevated the status of women?
Degraded it from the beginning. Like, there's no, in Islam, women does not matter. Women doesn't matter. So these Muslim scholars and their teachings, they only teaching you the surface. They're not teaching you the truth about Islam. That's why you will find out after you convert to Islam these things.
And then it's too late, because then you're subject to the penalties for apostasy, which in a Muslim country means death, and Western just ostracization and social harassment and whatnot. Just that minor thing.
So I also have conclusive proof, if you pull up what I have, that in fact Islam degraded women over what the norm was in Medina when they came. So this is Umar whining to Muhammad. We, the people of Quraysh, used to have the upper hand over our wives. By that, they mean that they would not even venture an opinion in context. Whenever you find out what he's whining about, he was complaining about something being wrong, and his wife gave him her opinion, and he was offended by her venturing an opinion when he was just essentially using her as if he's talking to a dog and expecting no answer, right? We used to have the upper hand of our wives, but when we came to the Ansar, we found that their women had the upper hand over the men. So our women also started learning the ways of the Ansari women. I shouted at my wife, and she retorted against me, and I disliked that she should answer me back. So this is around the time that this entire story, it's a really long hadith, talks about how Muhammad once again approved of beating wives because he had briefly forbidden it. And then after that, the only thing he forbade was hitting your wife in the face. So you're not allowed to punch her in the face anymore, but go ahead and beat her. So the people of Medina, the Ansar, the women had a much, much higher status than the Quraysh did, or the Muslim women who were in Mecca. The Muslim women in Mecca were much degraded compared to the women in Medina, period. And this was returned to its rightful and normal place, according to Umar, of course, and so this is a story of like how badly women in the Muslim community were treated then, and then continued to be treated, because Muhammad soon said, go ahead and slap him, and laughed whenever Umar told a story about beating his wife, and when Umar and Abu Bakr both hit their daughters in front of him. So this is, by the way, after the time of the Justinian Code, and I believe it is in, and I can't remember the book right now, but in the Justinian Code, one of the reasons that a woman could divorce her husband in Christian Byzantine Empire was because he hit her. Also, verbal abuse was grounds for divorce, because no woman should be beaten by her wife or should be verbally abused and degraded. And it explicitly says that those are grounds for divorce in the Justinian Code. So why on earth do we need Muhammad to tell us how to treat women when the Justinian Code already says you can't hit your wives and you can't verbally abuse them, when Muhammad endorsed both?
Yeah, good question. And I
If
have
I
a
may,
I,
sorry.
I have
If I may
a
just go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
I'll be brief. I have a suggestion why women are allowed to be hit anywhere other than the face, and that's probably because you're not going to see any of their other body parts. So again, the idea of the public shame is the problem. That you'd see in public that they've been beat, and someone might think badly of you because they might have human decency and think that a woman shouldn't be beat. Well, as long as it's somewhere else where no one can see, it's all good. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I think that like a lot of things you guys have said is absolutely proving the point. I just want to extend and just probably add one more point. I mean, how would you know that whether the status of a certain gender is, or a certain race or certain color is whether uplifted or it has been degraded? Is how their representation in society in certain sectors. When you look at pre-Islamic era, and when you look at the Arabia, how many women entrepreneurs they had? Look at Khadija, right? She was one of the prominent businesswomen who actually employed Muhammad, right? So talk about there were a few so-called female prophets were there. I mean, let's consider they were not prophets. Let's consider them as a guru or a teacher or somebody as a professor, right? Somebody is trying to profess, or somebody is trying to preach their ideology or preach their knowledge, right? So there were a lot of representation of women in that culture. What happened? Like, give me any reference in Islam where after Islam, what's the status of, what's the contribution of a woman in a society at different levels? Zero. So how they have been upgraded? That I hope that answers his question as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'm not seeing any upgrade. We've been going a while, so let me just. There are a couple super chats that I definitely want to bring up. Our Kitsune donation, no comment. Thank you very much for that. Dosh Safraz is an Islamic troll that almost left Islam on Somali Christian TV broadcast last week. That second part's definitely interesting. So if by chance you see this later or you're still watching, let me know what video that is. I'd like to check that out. I did notice that Safraz came in. He made like one, maybe two comments, and then he disappeared. He definitely seems to have been disheartened, which is great. I pray for Safraz. I think that he is definitely, despite his posturing, I think he's very new to this Dawa game, and I think he's really struggling. And I think there is a good chance that he will ultimately leave Islam. So definitely be praying for him. And maybe we'll close out on this. Basil Jet, somehow this has to be taken to the public arena and Western cultures. And indeed, that's what we're trying to do here. That's why we're doing this. We want this information to get out. I did promise Ankhs that I would answer his question, so this won't be the last, but any thoughts on how we can get more people aware of what happens to girls in Islamic society?
It's very hard because, like, I just emphasize that these are the Islamic sources and that how Islam works, that this is really what is taught, this is really what is told, this is really, really what is declared. Like, that this is Islam itself. These are the Islamic sources. That just really needs to be hammered home.
That works. Luckily, we still have freedom of speech for the most part. I think we definitely do in the United States. I think Europe still has reasonable freedom of speech. So that's the answer, is to talk about it.
Yeah.
More people talking about this, the better. And that doesn't mean everyone needs to, start their own YouTube channel or whatever, and just talk to your friends about it.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to have Muslims in your life, talk to them about it. You don't have to be really mean about it. You don't have to go straight for the jugular. Just, ask questions, bring it out subtly, and get people to realize what is really going on. The question from Onks, which is off topic, but he asked it several times and asked us to please answer. 4 Byzantine church museums converted to mosques. Hagia Sophia in Istanbul and more than 12 churches in Canada has been converted into mosques, and all we is worried about is Putin invading Ukraine. Why? Well, first of all, I'm not remotely worried about maybe that's not the best word. It's nowhere near the top of my priority list is the situation in Ukraine. We just spent 3.5 hours talking about the abuse of children in Islam. Obviously, that takes a bit more precedence in my mind. Now, as to the conversion of churches into mosques, first of all, that may or may not be true. This is a meme that's posted around in various different forms by Muslims, and most often it's just flat out false. It's just made up information. But let's just say, for argument's speaking, it's true. A church is a building. The church is the community of believers. The community of believers is not being converted into Muslims. So if a church building was no longer used and Muslims saw the propaganda benefit of buying that particular building and converting it to a mosque, then that's all that is that someone with enough money to buy the building saw the propaganda value of converting that particular building to a mosque. Any other thoughts you guys want to add?
Yeah, yeah, sure. If nobody has anything to say, I would just like to go last. But yeah, I think it's very, very important for us to keep building this narrative and start, regardless of how big or small it is. It's very important. Everything and anything that we are saying here is going to make a difference. If not today, maybe tomorrow. And internet has come as our savior, to be very honest. Otherwise, these things were already there, were being practiced by majority of the population in this world, and nobody knew about it, because the rosy picture of Islam, it was being painted in all over the world. Thanks to the internet, that a lot of these guys are speaking up, a lot of these movements are going on. So I'm very positive that Islam, within some time, will definitely crumble. It's just that we really need to control our politicians, because Islam is nothing to offer anybody or any individual anything in spiritual. It's all political. We have to understand that. And they play a very, very long-term game. Like how they're creeping in the US and in Canada, it's a very, very concerning. And the governments, and especially these communists, that we really need to put them into their place. If we don't do that, then it's going to be too late, because they all believe in the same idea. They all believe in totalitarian idea. They don't accept the diversity, and that is a problem. So I think we are on the right path. Of course, we are short of funds because we do not have petrodollars, so we might not capture the biggest media houses. But I think with this internet, and as long as the people that we are discussing within our community about the real picture of Islam, I think we are safe.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a very good way to close us out. We don't do these shows to entertain ourselves. We don't do these shows to embarrass Islam per se. We do these shows because we care. I'm often accused of hating Muslims, and if I actually hated Muslims, I would just keep my mouth shut and just go about my life, because in the area where I live, the Muslim population is insignificant, far less than 1%, I would never have to worry about Islam. And so if I actually just hated Muslims, I just wouldn't say anything. But I in fact love Muslims. I want to see them come to Christ. I want to see them escape the horrible, disgusting system that they're in, especially if they are females, because as little as Islam has to offer for men, has even less to offer for women. So thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless.
Thank you. God
Thank you,
bless
guys.
you.
Thank you. Pleasure to
Bye.
meet you guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Nice
Bye.
meeting you.